Alright, so let's just tell everyone who you are and why you specifically are knowledgeable about organic agriculture.
Okay, so my name is Matthew Draper, and I run North Valley Organics, which is a small organic farm in the North Valley of Albuquerque. We have 3 different plots, and it probably totals about 3 acres. We grow mixed vegetables, fruits, and we are certified organic. So that gives me a certain amount of knowledge about organic agriculture. Um, there's obviously lots more that I still have to learn, but yeah, I've been doing this since 2014, so this is going to be my 7th year, I believe. I think 2015 was my first full year.
Nice, so about,
Yeah,
is that 7 years now?
yeah,
Just
this
about
is my
6 or
7th
7?
year. Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
Just start off, what is organic farming? And what are some of the key practices associated with it?
Yeah, so organic farming is the ancient way of growing food, right? It involves growing the food that we eat, using only things that are available in nature, things that you can get from the natural world, not things that come out of a lab synthetically.
And what would you say some of the key practices are that you use?
Right. Yeah. I mean, organic is a big general word, and it can mean a
Yeah.
lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, organic is part of what we do. But I'd almost say more importantly than being organic is that we're soil health farmers. We grow great soil. For us, what that means is our principal fertilizer is compost. We buy lots of compost and we put it down on all of our rows, and we don't use any kind of synthetic extracts. And some of the other techniques is we grow a cover crop, which you can see right here. We grow these cover crops in the walkways between our rows, all up and down the farm. We grow cover crops in our rows. We planted these seeds right here that you see growing. We try to minimize tillage. I mean, we still till, but we're aware that too much tillage can be really destructive to the soil. And then, we use some organic pest control products, different oils, soaps. We just use living things to grow our plants. We don't use synthetic chemicals. Yeah.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah.
And what would you say, at least for you guys here on your farm of North Valley Organics, what are the pros and cons of organic farming?
I think for me it's mostly pros.
Yeah.
Because with organic farming, a lot of the chemicals that are used in conventional farming are very strong and poisonous. So every time you spray an herbicide or pesticide, you kill a lot of the living organic matter in your soil, and it's the living microbes in the soil that make a huge difference with regards to what you grow. So we really try to foster healthy microbial communities so that we can grow more food, and we can grow more food in less area.
So would you say by fostering good soil health, you're actually able to produce more food, not less, versus using a traditional fertilizer?
For the most part, we're growing more food than we would if we grew conventionally, and the food that we do grow is healthy. You're not putting poison into your body every time you eat it, which is a thing. I mean, when you eat food from the supermarket that's conventionally grown, there's all kinds of pesticide residues on it, and so when you eat it, you are ingesting poison, whether you like that or not. And I think perhaps some of the cons are that it's inherently more complex. There's more moving parts. I mean, for me, that's a pro because it makes it more interesting.
Right. Yeah.
But my impression of conventional farms is that they tend to grow one crop and they grow it on a large scale, and they have a few simple kind of chemical inputs that they use on a regular basis to keep things going. It's more of a machine. And so that has its benefits. And perhaps financially,
Sure.
perhaps it's more regular financially. Although, you get more money selling organic produce, like per pound. You can sell at a higher price. So my impression is that if you can figure out how to grow food organically at yields similar to conventional, you're making more money. So it's better, And I think if anything, it's just the complexity that makes it challenging. But that's also what makes it so invigorating
That's cool.
and cool. Yeah.
So there's the pros. The soil's healthier, so
Mm-hmm.
you maybe get more food, and the food you are ingesting and selling isn't covered in toxins and poisons.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe a con is that it's a little more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're invested in farming, could be a pro in a way.
Yeah.
Is that a good summary?
Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
Do you think that financially, if organic farming, as far as the infrastructure goes or the inputs you have to have, would you say it's more expensive, or do you think it costs more to farm organically than traditionally?
So the difference is, like when you get started, it's probably going to be pretty similar.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be inputting things, you're going to have inputs each year. But the thing about organic systems is each year they get more like self-regenerative. The more compost you put into the soil, the more alive the soil is. At some point, you may not need compost anymore. Whereas the more synthetic fertilizer you put into the soil, you're actually destroying the living material in the soil. Like synthetic fertilizer disrupts the ancient relationships that these plants had with microbes, right? It's sort of like feeding them formula. Like when you feed a baby formula, you replace the human connection that a baby gets from nursing. So I think what's cool about organics is that the longer you do it, the healthier your system gets, and then the less inputs you have to put in, and the more everything sort of runs itself.
Have you guys noticed maybe you have to spend less money on compost, like maybe from the time you started to the time now, possibly? Or do you think it's maybe too soon to notice a difference like that?
I really just noticed the soil improving, and so I feel less of a need to drench the soil in compost.
Absolutely.
I think that yes, we are using less compost per square foot than when I started up, for sure.
That's really cool. I like that.
So what we're trying to do is reverse all of those cycles, so that each year our ecosystem's more in balance and we need less pesticide, and each year our soil's more in balance and we need less fertilizer, right?
Very cool.
That's
What would you maybe say the differences would be maybe between like organic farming and sustainable or regenerative farming? Do you think there's a lot of cross sections between those? So sustainable, organic, and maybe regenerative for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, these are all different words that people are using to describe, alternative approaches to agriculture. And so organic has a more specific definition because to be organic you get certified from a governing body, right? So there's some uniformity on even the world scale when you say organic, what it means. The issue is that organic is a big umbrella, and it doesn't really, like, being organic means that you're not using a lot of these conventional pesticides and fertilizers. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're building soil and creating vibrant systems. A lot of organic farmers just they'll replace herbicides with a tiller and just till the heck out of everything. And over-till it, and they'll replace synthetic fertilizers with, a fertilizer that's made out of seaweed and is derived organically, but is still more or less this kind of synthetic input. So there's a lot of organic farms that don't have some of those pros that we were just talking about building better soil each year and better ecosystems, that take care of themselves. There's still a lot of organic farms that get on the same kind of treadmills that conventional farms do. And so that's where you get the words sustainable and regenerative, is because
further distinction.
Is people trying to distinguish what they do from people who may be organic but are still ultimately destroying the soil.
Yeah.
Right? And so regenerative captures that spirit of growing something more. And so we like to think that we're regenerative. There is now a regenerative organic certification that's being piloted.
Oh, really?
It's being.
I was about to ask you about that, actually.
Yeah, it's being sponsored by Dr. Bronner's soap, which is one of our pesticides, by the way. So, full disclosure, I mean, I support Dr. Bronner's by buying their products.
Yeah.
But anyway, full disclosure, that I. But anyway, they're piloting a regenerative organic certification.
Very cool.
Which our new certifying agency says that they could certify us as if we wanted to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you think there's a need for that, for a different certification that's like more?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a demand for that, for people who want to see that not only is this organic, but that it's really it's a caring kind of organic. It goes to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it would be, and hopefully that will drag the big umbrella of organic certification farther along as well.
Why did you choose to become an organic farmer, and what do you enjoy most about working here at North Valley Organics?
I chose to become an organic farmer really because I was inspired by so many stories of other farmers. I read about a lot of these things that we were just talking about. And I was really inspired by the idea of regenerative organics, by the idea of what is the next step for agriculture, and what's and really the next step is what does our future look like? What's the next 200 years going to look like? Because I just don't think that our current agricultural system, as it's currently designed, can really keep things up for the long term. There's always short-term fixes, but what the long-term fix is really to look towards this idea of soil health and regenerative ag. Yes, at some point I wanted to take all these ideas I was really excited about and put them in practice and see them working in the world around me. And on another level, I just couldn't stop myself.
Really?
Yeah. So I lived in Ecuador in 2008 to 2010.
Okay.
And in Ecuador, most of the farms are what you call smallholder farms. So they're kind of like this farm.
Really?
Yeah. There are people who have 3 acres, 10 acres, maybe 3 1-acre plots, kind of like we do.
Okay.
But
small scale.
yeah, a lot of them aren't even full-time farmers. But the point is that every piece of land is used productively to grow something, and often on a small scale. And so there's just this ethic that land is very valuable and soil is very valuable, and also that you can literally live right next to your food. And so all of these were new concepts for me living down there. And so I came back to Albuquerque and I just saw all this unused land, and it just felt like a waste, and I was also missing the fact that in Ecuador, I was living and breathing right next to my food, and my mother-in-law had a little garden where she raised all this food on literally like 2 tiny city lots. She has chickens and pigs and fruit trees and vegetables, and it's all packed in.
Wow. Sounds pretty efficient.
It is. It's very efficient.
Yeah.
It's not very profitable, but it's efficient. So I came back here and I just saw all this unused space, and some of the unused space was owned by my parents, who had so behind their house they have a little 1/4 acre lot.
Okay.
That used to be part of a field like this. And so I cut down a bunch of elm trees and cut down a bunch of Johnson grass, and And so I made about 7 rows, so about as wide as this hoop house and about 50 feet long. So I did that the first year. Then the next year I doubled it. And then the next year I doubled that, and then I maxed out my parents' little field. And this was just a garden for me,
But selling it at that point,
yeah,
kind of for yourself.
Yeah. Well, by that third year I started to sell it to my friends. I had a little bit extra to sell to my friends and neighbors.
Sure.
And then I was involved in a master's program, and so I did my master's in sustainable farming.
Okay.
Kind of just because I was really interested in this concept and curious about how does it work if you want to grow bigger than just this big garden I've got. And that's when I met Miner Morgan, who's my farming mentor and one of the landowners for North Valley Organics. And so the next year we doubled in size again, but this time we were farming on Miner's land.
Yeah.
And we grew, it's about the size of this hoop house now. So we grew 7 rows, and they were about 200 feet long.
Wow.
That year, I think we did $5,000 in sales.
Nice.
And that was the first year that North Valley Organics was born. And then
And what year was that? Was that 2015?
Yeah. And so then the next year, I just got excited, and I just, like I said, $5,000 in sales. That doesn't sound like enough to really quit your job, but I was like, well, I think if I put all my attention to this, I can make it work. And so I just went in full time, and we farmed. So we farmed all of Miner's land the next year. So it was kind of this continual doubling, is what I'm saying. It was sort of this exponential growth,
exponential.
which is exactly how nature works. It's like the lilies on a pond metaphor. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where the lilies, there's a 16th of the pond covered this year, and then next year there's an 8th and a 4th, and pretty soon the whole pond's covered. That's kind of how it was for me. So by 2017, I got this field. I convinced my parents to let me farm it, and
They think you were crazy.
well, they did until I showed them what I was doing with Miner, and then they were like, "Okay, yeah, whatever you're doing over here, you can do over at Rancho."
This is the proof of concept kind of.
Yeah. So 2017 was really the year when North Valley Organics took somewhat of the form it has now. That was the first year when we hired somebody to help us out. And
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And we just grew so many tomatoes that year. It really just sort of grew out of this love of, it's like every year I did more of it and I just wanted more. I was never sated, oh no, that's enough gardening. It's like I always wanted more, and the idea that I could do it full time and provide a service to the community, and make a living myself out of it was just this dream that I've been constantly pursuing.